Mrs. Veld, if you will.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks to all the speakers for their extensive introductions. I find it rather difficult to comment or to ask questions because the areas that have been covered are so vast. I'm really not very clear anymore what we are talking about today. Measures that are taking place in policy areas ranging from the internal market through regular policing to intelligence to military defence, which are very, very different areas where the EU has very different powers. In the normal, in the offline world, policing is something very different than defence, with very different safeguards for civil liberties, for example. If I see a slide that speaks of hacktivism, activism, terrorism, I get seriously worried. Can somebody explain to me how we distinguish? I mean, the lines between all these different areas are blurred. We are talking about resilience of systems, about security of payments, about fraud, about illegal downloading, which is a violation of copyright, the sexual exploitation of children, all the way up to military attacks and terrorism. These are all very different things. Why do we include? I mean, I'm very much in favour of interdisciplinary cooperation, but this is just too big. We're throwing everything into one single basket simply because it's taking place on the internet. I don't think that is a very good criterion to base a single policy on. If I hear that there is a programme board that includes of the cybercrime unit that includes representatives of the External Action Force, can somebody explain to me how they get to be on the programme board of a police unit? I think we have to be very clear on what kind of policies we are talking about, what kind of powers, what kind of safeguards are there, what are the objectives. It needs to be, and then there's the other side of the story. We know that there's some. Well, first of all, questions were being asked about other countries, nations, governments that may be executing attacks on systems within the European Union. I mean, in recent days we've all read the reports about alleged attacks organised by the Chinese government on American infrastructure. I'm not really sure if it is possible to trace that back to actual governments or other actors. I don't know. But I think it would be an interesting question to ask, what are we doing? What are EU governments doing? If we are talking about defending European Union interests against outside attacks, does that mean, and if there is involvement of the External Action Service, does it mean that we too are going to carry out that kind of attacks? Or economic attacks? And if so, who will decide on that? And then can we also asked the question about governments in Europe spying illegally on their own citizens. I'm not fully familiar with all the different terminology. I'm sure that Jan Albrecht here is better informed than I am, but I remember that at least the German and the Dutch governments have bought illegal spyware to use on their own citizens. So, can we then, if we're going to protect our citizens, can we include that kind of protection, protecting citizens from their own governments and not only by their own governments? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs.